Hello and welcome to this week's edition of The Walkthrough. I am your host, Intern Joe Macheca. South Carolina lost a tough one to their arch rival Clemson at home at Williams-Brice Stadium to conclude their 2023 campaign by the final score of 16-7. It was 9 points, 3 field goals that ultimately made the difference. The Clemson offense didn't score a single touchdown. It was their defense that happened to score the lone touchdown for the Tigers on a fumble return early on in that contest. There's a lot to talk about from that one. And then there's also a lot of offseason questions, which I will get to. And then, as always, we will throw on the optimism shades as we do for this show. But first, let me talk to you guys about our sponsors really quickly. Our first sponsor of the day, as always, is our good friends over at Liberty Tax. Taxiety is that uncertain feeling you get right before doing your taxes, but you don't have to go through it alone. The tax team at Liberty Tax in Irmo, Lexington, and Columbia will walk you through the process, clear up any confusion, and guarantee you'll get the biggest possible refund or your money back. It's tax time. If you're in a hurry for your refund, call the tax team at Liberty Tax. Fast, accurate, and guaranteed. On the other hand, if you think you might be owing Uncle Sam, talk to the Liberty Tax Team to make sure you're not paying more than you should owe. They'll find every possible deduction for you. Locally owned and operated, staffed by tax professionals from your neighborhood. Open 9 to 9 on weekdays and 9 to 5 on Saturdays with multiple service options. Start through the Liberty Tax mobile app or through the desktop portal. Make an appointment or just walk in. Give a call to upload your tax documents. And when you come in, your return will be ready to review and sign. Give them a call at 803-462-5576 on your screen right now. Once again, and for those listening, 803-462-5576 for all of your tax needs. This show is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. He's above us on all of our Gamecock Central Live programming. He's the man over at the Movement Mortgage Network. In need of help with your mortgage, call on our good friend Clint Hammond of the Movement Mortgage Network. He's been in the mortgage industry since 2003, which allows him to help everyone from the first-time home buyer to the complicated and complex jumbo buyer. Whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance, nothing is more important than a well-thought-out financial strategy that comes with 5-star customer service. He's even helped out our very own Wes Mitchell and former Gamecock quarterback Perry Orth with their mortgages. So give our guy Clint a call. Like I said, he's above us on all of our Gamecock Central Live programming. His number, as always, is 803-771-6933. Once again, on the screen right now. And for those listening, 803-771-6933. So getting into the game, it was a rough one if you are a South Carolina Gamecock. It was not what you expected. All the momentum had been building up to this moment with a chance to become bowl eligible against your arch rivals at home, even though Williams-Brice had kind of been a house of horrors, like Chris Clark said in his prediction for the Clemson Tigers. The South Carolina hadn't scored on Clemson at Williams-Brice since 2017. Entering this one, they broke that streak in this game, but I mean, it clearly wasn't enough. South Carolina was 3 of 13 on third down. You're not going to win any games, let alone games against a good team when you're or 2 of 13, 2 of 13 on third down. Not great. And then Clemson's special team stepped up. I'm going to get to that in a second. But their kicker was 3 of 3, very clutch, made a lot of field goals. And again, I'm going to get to that because there's a whole story surrounding their kicker and everything this year. And it quite simply adds insult to injury. But I'm going to get there. South Carolina's defense stood on their head, also had a really good game. I'm going to get to that as well. But starting with the offense, like I said, 2 of 13 on third down. That's not going to win you any football games against any good teams, and especially one against this Clemson front seven. I want to give credit where credit is due. That Clemson front seven is one of the best South Carolina saw all year. I would rank it next to Georgia and Tennessee. So, and those were also games where South Carolina struggled. Spencer seemed like he was running for his life, and also into those games. I mean, minus Georgia, where you had Tree and Tro having to start, but entering the Tennessee game, you had some consistency in your offensive line. You entered that one kind of excited that you might find some consistency with your offensive line and some protection for Spencer. So good, not great on offense. I mean, there was some good, but largely not great. Like I said, 2 of 13 on third down. You can't win. Can't win many games. So yeah, very, very tough. Spencer's last game, I mean, not the way you want to go out if you're Spencer Rattler in your South Carolina career. He finished the day 16 of 32, 112 yards and a pick. The pick was, I mean, nice play by Barnes, the DB. That kid is going to step up, and he's been big for Clemson this year, especially in their defensive backfield. I mean, I wasn't necessarily impressed with Clemson's defensive backfield as much as I was with Barnes. Barnes can play, and he gave Xavier Luedecke a pretty good run at it. I still think Luedecke had the edge, but that Clemson defensive backfield is something to watch these next couple years, weeks. I mean, it's going to evolve depending on opt-outs and stuff like that, but their defensive backfield is getting better. South Carolina knew that Clemson's front seven was really good. I mean, that's always been a mainstay. Even with Venables gone, you saw how good it was last year, and it just got better. They have a lot of guys that can really, really play. They got to Spencer 36 times, according to Pro Football Focus. Those were the pressure numbers. Trotter Jr. or Horror, I'm saying that wrong. I apologize. And Tyler Davis. So they're two defensive tackles in their middle. Mike linebacker really led the way in terms of pressure. They somehow only ended up with 2 sacks. Give credit to the South Carolina offensive line with that. But yeah, Clemson's front seven is one of the best in the country. So they played like it on Saturday night, and I was very impressed with that. So got to give credit where credit's due. They knew what they were doing defensively, and I mean, quite simply had one of their best games of the year. I mean, ironically, so did South Carolina's defense. And I'm going to get to that, but wanted to go back to the South Carolina offense real quick because the run game. I wanted to talk about the run game. The run game was non-existent. 24 rushes for 57 yards and a 2.4 average is not going to win you many football games, especially, like I said, against good opponents. So that is not great. And then talk about Mario Anderson for a second. Mario Anderson was banged up in that second quarter. Everyone knows it. I think, even on the sideline, you kind of sense that he wasn't okay. I don't know what went down on the sidelines, why he went back into the game. I'm assuming he cleared some kind of protocol for him to go back into the game. And, seeing that hit and him get up from that hit on TV, I assumed he was out, but then all of a sudden he was back in there. It seemed like the next play might have been one play in between that, but Mario Anderson did not seem the same. Maybe he was, but I mean, you couldn't really tell from where I was. Like I had mentioned, this show is coming out on Monday because I traveled home from Indiana yesterday, and airport Wi-Fi was not my friend. So anyways, that is that. But Mario Anderson banged up again. I don't know if I'd let him go back into the game. Maybe it was different on the sidelines. Maybe, I'm assuming he had to have passed some kind of protocol because I don't think South Carolina's training staff would let him go into that game, back into that game without passing some kind of protocol. So I'm not dinging the training staff here. I think they did, some kind of check or something like that. But from my angle on TV, it looked like, he was banged up and he didn't look the same for the rest of the game. And maybe, sometimes a hit will do that to you when you go up the middle and you take a hit like that. Sometimes you're steering away from going straight down and kind of lowering your head a little bit as a ball carrier, even though you're not supposed to do that anymore. But either way, you're not going as hard sometimes if you get shaken up like that. So maybe that could be it. I'm assuming that is the case. Mario kind of, I mean, sometimes you can see ghosts. That happens, especially when you get hit like that. And as I just mentioned, Clemson's front seven is very, 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 very good. A lot of those guys going to the NFL. So that didn't surprise me. I knew how good they were coming in. But so flipping the script here, talking about Clemson's offense real quick, the run game was phenomenal. Was it death? Like I tweeted during the game, it was death by 1,000 cuts, right? No, it wasn't death by 1,000 cuts. It was death by Will Shipley and Phil Mafia carrying the ball 34 times a game. Both I wrote about it. I believe that article came out on Thanksgiving, but it was just kind of a quick report on the run game. And, when I dove into the numbers, the PFF numbers, those two guys were circled. I'm sure Clayton White had him circled as well. But it's really, really hard to stop one guy, if not two, when your offense is clicking like that in terms of the run game. Shout out to South Carolina's defense. I mean, you didn't allow a touchdown from that offense. You didn't really allow any big plays. And granted, Clemson was missing some wide receivers coming into this one. Antonio Williams did not make the trip. Everyone knows who Antonio Williams is. If you're watching the show, you probably know who he is or remember him at least from last season. Williams didn't make the trip. He was the guy who fumbled the punt in last season's Palmetto Bowl. So he did not make the trip. He's been, a good, not great wide receiver for them, but at least a consistent face in the passing game for Cade Klubnik would have probably made a difference, but we didn't see that. Cade Klubnik really didn't have anybody to throw to besides his running backs. So their offense was handcuffed a little bit by that. But then again, I mean, they were going to stick with their bread and butter regardless. The pair finished with 225 yards on the ground, when you exclude the sack, the quarterback, Cade Klubnik, also got in on the action. I mentioned that in my article as well. People forget that Cade Klubnik is really, really dynamic with his legs. I think people forget, Klubnik is a very big part of their run game. He has a lot of designed runs, and I think that's part of the reason why he's, kept his job so long in Clemson is because he is a threat to run, and it's now granted it's not his primary focus, but I think that's what makes him so dangerous back there is that he can take off when he needs to. I believe when I was running the numbers on it, he hadn't rushed for over he hadn't had a carry for over 10 yards in only 2 games this season. He got it again against South Carolina, so that extended his 10-game rushing streak. It was broken up somewhere in the middle of the year. I can't remember exactly where it was, but Klubnik very dangerous with his legs. South Carolina saw that. Their defense was prepared for it. I thought South Carolina's defense played well, right? What Clemson's offense did well is that they again, like I said, they stuck with their bread and butter. Will Shipley, Phil Maffa, Cade Klubnik on the ground. They're gonna run it down your throat and basically put the car in neutral. And so and just run the game out, right? Like when you aren't scoring a whole lot of points, it's almost like a Big Ten offense, realistically. And they were, like I said, they were handcuffed without Antonio Williams and some wide receiver threats. So they kind of simplified the offense, did what worked, and the game just moved quicker. I mean, they were on offense for longer. The time of possession numbers were pretty substantial. Yeah, the time of possession numbers are obviously leaning towards Clemson. I mean, Clemson had the ball for 38 minutes of that game, and South Carolina had it for 22. Not great. Clemson, on the other hand, obviously I was thrown out the South Carolina 2 of 13 on third down. Clemson was 7 of 16, which also isn't great, but it was a lot better than South Carolina. Clemson was the more penalized team, 6 penalties for 40 yards. South Carolina, 4 penalties for 30 yards. Not great. I mean, just overall, not a good game for South Carolina. Sure, again, as the recurring theme of this season for the Gamecocks, you had a lot of decent individual performances, more in particularly on defense. Nicky Minwori continues to excel. Finally got his pick last week. Had another pick this week. Shout out to Nicky Minwori, really coming along. That's exactly what you want to see if you're South Carolina fans, because he is part of that young core. He is part of the reason you should have excitement. And don't worry, I'm going to get to the optimism shades in a little bit. But again, shout out to Nicky Minwori. There were a lot of guys. Debo Williams and DQ Smith also made some noise. Debo Williams is playing himself into the NFL at this point. The scouts sure as heck noticed the tackling numbers, and I compare him to, similarly, if South Carolina fans remember, an Ernest Jones, right? Drafted by undrafted free agent, or I can't remember if he got drafted, but he's playing for the LA Rams now, and he's a stud, plays a lot. And I think Debo Williams has that potential to make an NFL team very happy. Just the way he plays, the whole mentality thing, the David Goggins mentality. He's going to go into interviews and go to the combine and quite possibly get drafted. If he doesn't get drafted, again, he's going to be an undrafted free agent and make some noise via that. I don't think Debo Williams' football career is over in the slightest. Also, Jelon Kilgore stepped up a little bit after that punt, or after the muffed punt. Granted, he didn't lose the muffed punt, but I know he was on himself for it, and certainly seemed like he was. And so Jelon Kilgore had a decent game in the defensive backfield. And I will say Des Yu had a tackle. He's going to continue to shine as well. So there's a lot of good coming out of this defense and a lot of good coming out of this game, if you will, on defense. Now, the question about Clayton White's future is still up in the air. I don't know if I'm in a position to answer that question for, like, in my opinion. Like, I don't know if Clayton White should lose his job at the end of the year. I think earlier I said if he continued that skid, but the way he has continued to evolve this defense throughout this tail end of the stretch or tail end of this year, this little stretch of play that they've had these last couple of weeks has been really good. And I will give credit to Clayton White. Like, when he was having the midseason struggles, it was when he was banged up. Like, typically when a defense goes throughout a year, they make adjustments. They have some of the same guys and they go through adjustments. They work things out and the defense evolves as you go along. Well, in Clayton White's defense, he didn't have the same guys in and out week in, week out. He was having guys being banged up left and right. And so the defense couldn't necessarily evolve. They couldn't switch up some of their calls and evolve like they needed to. And like they did down the stretch, because they were healthy down the stretch, right? You kind of knew who you were playing with. A resurgence of Bam Martin Scott as well certainly helps. Shout out Bam Martin Scott, Indiana kid. Really, really coming along for South Carolina. And that's what you want. You need that development spot, especially with Mo Kaba missing. And who knows what Mo Kaba's future is. I mean, you really hope the best for him. I'm not sure what his whole options are. I haven't really gone down that rabbit hole yet, but I hope Mo Kaba, whatever he ends up doing next season, I hope he's happy, because he's a really, really good kid. And was a really good linebacker, still is a good linebacker, but we'll have to see. Prayers up for Mo Kaba. But again, Bam Martin Scott was great. Debo Williams, DQ Smith, like I mentioned. But if you're South Carolina's defense, man, like, and I guess going back to Clayton White too, like, you should be happy with your performance in this one. Your offense essentially let you down, and that's very disappointing, considering how high-powered your offense had been coming into this one, how many points you have scored coming into this one. Granted, it wasn't a whole lot, but the offensive execution just needs to be better. It doesn't help when you don't have a run game to kind of lean on. In the SEC, you need some semblance of it, some semblance of a run game to kind of lean on and be able to, just rely on when you need it in tough spots, because you can't throw the ball the whole game. And I think against a good defense, at least, and Clemson's defense was very good despite their, lapses in the defensive backfield. You would think that Dowell Loggins in his game plan would have exploited the lapses in the defensive backfield, but shout out to Clemson again for being able to just kind of contain this offense, eliminate the big play. And when you do that with what South Carolina's offense was limited to at this point, and shut down the run game, if you can shut down the run game, especially after Mario and all of that, South Carolina's offense is very one-dimensional. And Clemson did that by eliminating the big play and just, stopping them on third down, forcing the hand of Shane Beamer to bring out Kai Kroger and punt. And shout out to Kai. I mean, for as bad as he had been, and now granted he'd stepped up a little bit towards the end of the year, but he didn't have the best start. Like, it wasn't the whole Keisman thing and all of that. Was not a similar year for Kai, but really stepped it up down the stretch. Was a big part in, keeping this game as close as it was, I think, because again, hailing from Indiana, I know all too well punting and football and all of that from the Big Ten. So, Kai Kroger's ability to keep them pinned back and letting the defense, go to work with a lot of field to work with, I think that was super good. And the defense bent. They didn't break. And with the evolution of everything that this defense has been this season, all the young guys stepping up, Jelon Kilgore, like I said, Desu was in there a little bit with the lack of being able to get pressure and all of that. I think this defense has evolved. And again, I'm not offering an opinion at this point on the Clayton White thing. Earlier this year, I thought, he's trending towards losing his job, but I think the way this defense has evolved, we will see. I don't know how I feel about it at this point. It's still up in the air. I could be completely wrong, and I think, could be swinging and missing with that, and he might lose his job, and it's like, oh, Joe, you were so wrong. Like, why was it even a question? I don't know. But for me, at least, I think it's up in the air at this point. So we will see. A lot of exciting things still to take from that. Like, you still have a lot of, really, really good young studs. If Clayton White were to leave, players might opt. might opt out, might go to the transfer portal. We'll see. There is no bowl game to opt out of. But, and on that thought, with the bowl game, or with South Carolina not being able to go to a bowl game, the only thing that might take away from that, because, right, you're going to have players who are going to the NFL. They're not going to play anyways. So for that, I mean, obviously there's the young players, right? The young guys on this roster who haven't necessarily had a chance to crack the roster will get a chance, would have gotten a chance in a bowl game to, essentially show what they're made of. We saw that last year with OD Fortune, that pick six in the Notre Dame game, essentially helped him earn a starting spot on this year's team. So not going to a bowl game, doesn't help those guys. But also, too, I feel bad for the early enrollees, the guys like Dante Reno, those guys. I believe Dylan Stewart's an early enrollee. Those guys would be able to practice with the squad for the bowl. No matter when the bowl was, they'd be able to get on campus early, start practicing with the bowl, get those extra practices, and that means a lot, especially for a guy like Dante Reno, Dylan Stewart. You kind of get to see college ball before you go through your first spring. You get a little taste of it, so you kind of know what to expect when you go into the spring. I think that helped a lot with Pup Howard. He also had a decent game and is stepping up as well. His development, I believe, is similar to that of Stone Blanton's, kind of thrown into the fire a little bit. We haven't seen like outer worldly numbers from Pup, but Pup has been a very consistent player on this defense. Still learning, still growing. At linebacker in the SEC, it's a very tough one to figure out, and to try to figure that out quickly. Again, very hard. Pup's been doing it well. He's been adjusting great. So, last thing. Yes, the kicker. Clemson's kicker. This is going to be, I guess, hard to talk about, adding insult to injury, but Clemson added the kicker, the guy who made the 3 kicks in that game to make the difference of it. He was added midseason. He was doing, I believe, grad school online. Dabo called him up. Why did Dabo call up this grad school kid? Well, because he was the backup kicker from last season. This kid was 8 of 14 on the year heading into this one. Not great. I mean, not the best numbers in the world. His name is Jonathan Weitz, something like that. But Dabo called him up midseason and said, hey, we're having kicking issues, brought him back onto campus. He was still going to grad school at Clemson, I believe, so he's still eligible to play. Came back in and made his career long of 50 in that game against South Carolina. Their special teams has not been great all year, and then all of a sudden it steps up. I think it's football karma, if you will. I don't know. But South Carolina's special teams is what won them the game last year, and then sure enough, it's Clemson's special teams that won them the game this year. Dare I say that Palmetto Bowl runs through special teams? Pete Lembo would certainly be happy with me if I said that, but I don't know. It won Clemson the game this year, won South Carolina the game last year, so I guess so at this point in this new era of it. Certainly things are going to be changing here coming up soon. New era of college football ushered in. Jack Velcher has been doing a really good job for us covering that and asking Shane the right questions, trying to figure out this whole new era of college football and navigating all of that and how, it affects South Carolina. But so that is pretty much everything from this Clemson game that I took away from, the I guess fluke, or if I don't think it's necessarily a fluke, but their special teams essentially won them the game. South Carolina's offense didn't perform well because Clemson's front seven was giving them fits. Again, shout out to them. Got to give credit where credit's due. And then also the Clemson run game was also very elite. Phil Maffa, Will Shipley, and then also Cade Klubnik. And the running dimension of Klubnik is what surprised me about him. Obviously, I was looking at his stats, like I said, going into this one on the ground, but it was surprising to me how well and how efficient he was on the ground. His ability to have carries longer than 10 yards, stretch the play out, get the first down. That was impressive to me, and I think he showed that on Saturday. But other than the ground game, I was not impressed with that the Clemson offense at all, really. And granted, they couldn't really score with the run game, but what it did its job, and that was death by 1,000 cuts, running out the game. Time of possession, like I mentioned, 38-22. Very, very big difference, and that's a large part because of Clemson's offense. It wasn't pretty, but they were able to get the job done, and there were a lot of questions still to be answered on South Carolina's side. You didn't execute. plain and simple. You didn't execute. It's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth. And next year, your schedule doesn't get any easier, right? Your schedule does not get any easier. Certainly does not get any easier. You have away games at Clemson, at Alabama, at Kentucky, at Oklahoma, and then you've got LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, Texas A&M at home, and then at Vanderbilt as well. LSU, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, Clemson, all going to be tough games next season. It'll be interesting to see how Shane Beamer and his boys, start off next season. I mean, you've got some questions. Spencer Rattler likely gone. His career at South Carolina was one of the better ones of a Gamecock quarterback we've seen in a long time, despite him only being here for 2 years. He said after the game, this place meant a lot to him. And so I'm assuming Spencer Rattler will be taking the leap to the next level in the NFL. But his career at South Carolina is likely over. We'll discuss all of that in weeks coming up as I have some good guests and whatnot. But as we always do, it's been a lot of, doom and gloom and Clemson talk because I got to give credit where credit is due. But this show, we like to stay optimistic, so it's time for the optimism shades, as always. So what is there to be optimistic about for South Carolina football, right? You just got beat by your rivals at home. You got not necessarily embarrassed, but your offense certainly didn't step up in the moment when you needed them most, and you had been hailing about this offense and the offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, it was your defense that stepped up, and it was a fluky play that just happened to go the wrong way. Why should you be optimistic about South Carolina football? Let me tell you this, okay? Daniel Hill, 4-star running back out of Meridian High School in Mississippi, was on campus. He is a very hard South Carolina lean at the moment. He is a running back. South Carolina, as I mentioned, is very short at running back. You have Mario Anderson, Juju McDowell out for the rest of the year, but will probably be back next year, but you're still short on running backs. TJ Braswell is in there, who is stepping up, has played pretty well so far. So he's another name to watch. We'll see if Mario comes back. But if you can get Daniel Hill in the 2024 class, he has the ability to make an impact right away. Alabama was really, really hard on his case. Alabama committed another running back. And from what I've been told, Daniel Hill did not like that. He is currently a hard South Carolina lead, 64.7% chance according to the On3 RPM. I think if you can land Daniel Hill, you're going to move up in the recruiting rankings. You currently sit at 19th overall. I think if you land Daniel Hill, you pop up. You have a 90 overall rating according to On3. 10th class in the SEC. Again, you land Daniel Hill, you're gonna move up. That class is also filled with offensive linemen: Cam Pringle, Josiah Thompson. The Great Wall of Carolina is essentially coming together. You already have Tree Babalade and Trovon Baugh, who have started their Tree Babalade and Trovon Baugh, who have started. They have become, ingrained in this offense. They've gotten used to the SEC at this point. Both have stepped up in big ways. Dylan Stewart, what is something South Carolina has been missing all season? Pass rushing. You're getting a dog out of Friendship Collegiate Academy out in Washington, D.C., 6'5", 250, edge rusher Dylan Stewart, 5-star plus. I mean, the kid is going to be a dog. He's number 10 in the national rankings. At one point, he was ranked number 1 according to On3. Very, very, very exciting stuff. Michael Smith, 4-star tight end. Again, Trey Knox, Joshua Simon, transfer tight ends. They're bringing up the next generation in Reed McKeeza. Like I said, Cam Pringle, 4-star, should be a 5-star. Josiah Thompson should also probably be a 5-star. On3 does not have a whole lot of offensive linemen that are 5-stars, but watch out for those two, Josiah and Cam, both South Carolina products as well, to continue to build that offensive lineup. Mazio Bennett, wide receiver. You were kind of short at wide receiver as well. Wendell Gregory out of Marietta, Georgia. Another edge rusher to pair with Dylan Stewart. Really good. Kelvin Hunter, 4-star out of West Florence. Also a dog. And then you can't forget about Dante Reno, also a 4-star quarterback. He is your quarterback in that class. First one committed, friend of the program. I'll have him on at some point in this offseason, if possible. Friend of the program. as well. He's been recruiting hard, and he was also on campus this weekend with Daniel Hill to try to sway him towards committing to South Carolina. So that's very big. That's also kind of serving as a recruiting update. But yes, watch out for Daniel Hill. Hard South Carolina lean at the moment, and everything that we're hearing at Gamecock Central and everything that I'm allowed to say is good. It is good. So there's that. While we got the optimism shades on, why else should you be excited about South Carolina football at the moment other than recruiting? Sure, they're doing well in recruiting. Why else? Well, the freshmen and the young guys are stepping up. Like I mentioned, Tree and Tro will now be very experienced. They're going to be a very big part of this offensive line going forward. Jelon Kilgore, Desu, Pup Howard, all stepping up on defense. Nick Harbor as well on offense. Sure, he had a big drop against Clemson. Oh, well, that happens. He's very young. The game has started to slow down to him in his first season. I think that's a very big win if you're South Carolina. For a guy that you weren't sure when he was going to develop, everyone's like, where's Harbor? Where's Harbor? There were some injury questions. He has been in the game for the last couple of weeks and he's mentioned it started to slow down to him. He gets this whole SEC football thing now. He's bound to have a big breakout year this next season. South Carolina's wide receiver room is going to need him. And then also he'll be playing alongside a guy like Mazeo Bennett. He's going to be able to bring up Mazeo Bennett, help him mature, possibly lead him to possibly have an impact early for the South Carolina offense. And then, of course, Lenore Sellers, when we're talking about freshmen, he's my Lenore Sellers take at the moment is that he's dominating against the twos, right? What does that tell you if he's dominating against the number twos when it comes to end game? It means that he gets a shot with the ones, right? He at least deserves a shot. So we will see. I mean, he's going to be competing. Luke Doty most likely to be in there for that quarterback battle. But Lenore Sellers is the guy to watch coming into the quarterback battle. And it'll be, I guess, a controversy. There isn't really a surefire guy at the moment. Sure, Sellers is playing well, but I would think Sellers would be the guy to come out of that battle, but just be optimistic. Watch that, and you would think that Sellers is eventually going to be the guy of the future going forward. And then, of course, you have Dante Reno coming in to learn from him and grow from him as well. But again, recruiting is going well. Stone Blanton is going to be a very big part of next season's team. He just completed his sophomore season, stepped up in a very, very, very big way, has been an anchor for this defense. And just has continued to learn and grow even throughout, like being thrust in the starting lineup as a freshman. Pup Howard has had a similar development, and I think Pup Howard and Stone Blanton are going to be a very big pair going forward. Bam Martin Scott, I know he's not an underclassman, but he has a lot of upside. He has played very, very well. Again, shout out him. He's an Indiana kid. Really, really developed well, and watch out for him to be a force. You also have Jerron Willis. Didn't see much time, but really, really young cat. He had originally committed to Ole Miss. He's going to be key for depth at linebacker next year. And then I mentioned Desu also stepping up. And there are a lot of guys that I'm missing, sure. But those are the guys that, in terms of next season, who to watch, what to look forward to. And like I said, recruiting is going well, right? Sure, South Carolina football won't be going to a bowl game. You lost to your arch rival, Clemson, at home to end your season. But there is still a lot of momentum in this building. Everyone was still bought in till the very end. I mean, I didn't really see anyone bought out in that game on Saturday. Everyone was still, really invested, still ready to win, still ready to go. I think that should excite you. They fought till the very end. And now next season, it is a prove-it year for Shane Beamer, right? You will have your recruits in. You will have your guys. And next year will be all about, it's like there will not be any more excuses in terms of, okay, what you inherited will no longer be a fallback. So it'll be a big year. There's a lot to be excited about, again, with the talent of Lenore Sellers, plenty to be excited about, and also the talent that you are bringing in with the recruiting class. If you could land Daniel Hill, super, super big win. So that is that with the optimism shades. It's fun to be optimistic. It's fun to look forward to things. But again, we got to come back down to earth here. But so that will do it for the walkthrough for this week. I did want to take this time at the end to just thank everyone for tuning in. Yes, this is episode 12. It is not the end of this show, though. This will not be a football-only show. We are only going to get bigger and better as the year rolls on for Gamecock Central. I wanted to thank Brian Shoemaker, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark, Mike Yuva, Jack Veltri, Colin Taylor, everyone who's helped me throughout this, Jay Phillips, Tyler Head, all the guys over at 107.5 The Game who have came on to my show, Chris Wellbaum, Jamie Shaw. We will be getting to them as well. I have a lot of good off-season interviews planned, not just football, but athletics related, similar to the Justin King one. I might have Justin on again in the offseason because that interview was great. If you haven't seen that, go check it out. It was during the bye week, so it was just kind of a check-in with our man Justin King. But it has been a fantastic season. I also wanted to thank everyone who has stuck with me throughout this football season, learning and growing as we go. Like I said, this is only episode 12. It is only the beginning of this show. Hopefully have some merch up here soon for you guys. But yes, it has been a whirlwind. Starting your own podcast has been crazy, especially when you've been moving all around the north and southeast. So apologies again for getting this up late. Delta was not my friend yesterday, but I'm not here to start a beef with a major airline. I'm here to say thank you again for following along and, allowing me to do this. It as an intern, still in college kid, it really means a lot to be able to have my own show and, to make strides and for y'all to support, everything that I'm doing here. It really means a lot, especially a kid from Indiana, not necessarily thinking about the SEC and everything and how big this whole thing has gotten. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I wanted to thank you guys for such a good football season and just know that it's going to be bigger and better. And hopefully the merch is on the way soon. And I'm excited for the offseason. We're going to have some good guests, talk about South Carolina football, basketball. The Fighting Quarter Zips, the Fighting Dawns are doing well. Keep your eyes peeled for those. And then as always, we have the Hard Fowler basketball only show. That's been going good. Jack Veltri and I host that, and then we'll have a guest related in the basketball world, but it's going to be a fun basketball season. And then always in the spring, you have baseball. So it's going to be fun spring football as well. So stay tuned. There's plenty more for this show to cover, to a lot of offseason questions. Shane Beamer, Gamecock football. I'm going to try to have some football related interviews as well. We aren't done covering football because this is the SEC. It really does just mean more. So be on the lookout for all of that. Super, super big stuff, cool stuff coming with my podcast and my show. But again, I wanted to thank everyone who's supported me, everyone watching, everyone at home, and then everyone at Gamecock Central and On3. You guys have been the best. Y'all know who you are. You're the best. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for watching. Tune in tomorrow night. Mike Yuva and I talking Tuesday nights. It'll be a doozy, kind of recap everything that happened football-wise and also preview some hoops. But thank you guys again for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day and be good. Thank you again.